Open your banking app right now. Don't overthink it. Just open it and scroll through the last 7 days of transactions like you're investigating someone else's life. Not because you're trying to shame yourself, but because nothing reveals your financial reality faster than your statement. If you're like most people, you're going to see the same pattern. Small numbers, repeated over and over again. $6.49, $12.30, $4.99, $18.72, $14.11. None of it looks dangerous. It's not a car. It's not a luxury vacation. It's not something dramatic enough to trigger panic. It's small stuff. And here's the trap. When you look at those charges individually, your brain labels them as harmless. They're too small to feel like a real problem. You don't debate them. You don't plan them. You don't even remember them. They slip under your awareness because they don't feel like a threat. But when you look at them together, they form something much uglier. They form a financial parasite, a slow, invisible leak that drains your future without ever giving you a moment dramatic enough to notice. That's why small purchases are so dangerous. They don't destroy wealth loudly. They destroy it quietly. Most people think wealth is destroyed by big mistakes. They think you go broke because you made one dumb decision, you bought something expensive, you took on the wrong debt, or you gambled and lost. And yes, those things can hurt you, but the middle class rarely gets wiped out by one explosion. The middle class gets erased by erosion. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts. Small spending is perfectly designed for that. It doesn't feel like spending. It feels like living. It feels like normal life. It feels like I deserved that, or it's not that much. And the problem isn't that you're weak. The problem is that your brain wasn't built to feel slow leaks. Your brain panics at big threats and ignores slow ones. It's wired to fear tigers, not subscriptions. And corporations know it. They don't need to convince you to drop $10,000 on something stupid. They just need to get you comfortable spending $10 more than you planned every day, forever. If you're someone who feels like you make decent money, but it still disappears, or you're investing but can't build real momentum, or you're trying to escape the paycheck cycle, but these little harmless purchases keep dragging you back, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps you out. Because today, we're going to expose the invisible purchases that are quietly killing your wealth, why they're so hard to notice, and the simple system that shuts the leak down without turning your life into misery. Here's the math nobody wants to do because it sounds ridiculous until you run it. Let's say you spend an extra $7 a day. That's not a crazy number. Most people spend that accidentally. A coffee, a snack, a delivery tip, a convenience fee, upgrading to the larger size because it was only a little more. $7 don't feel like noise. It feels like nothing. But over a year, it's $2,555. And the average person hears $2,555 and thinks, okay, that's not great, but it's not life-changing. That's because they're looking at it like a spender, not like an investor. Because $2,555 isn't just $2,555. It's a piece of your future you sold early. If that money was invested consistently into productive ownership over decades, the difference isn't small. Over time, that harmless leak becomes a missing six-figure, sometimes seven-figure outcome. Not because the market is magic, but because time is brutal. This is the painful truth. Your future isn't being stolen by one giant villain. It's being sold off in microtransactions that don't feel important enough to stop. And the worst part is you can't even remember what you bought. You traded freedom for moments you forgot. Every time someone says, "Stop buying coffee," people roll their eyes. And they should. Telling people their future depends on caffeine is lazy advice. So let's be precise. The problem isn't the coffee. The problem is autopilot. Autopilot is when your spending happens without a decision. It's when you wake up and money disappears, and you don't know where it went. Big purchases force you to think. You feel the pain, you research, you compare, you slow down, but small purchases bypass your brain like a Trojan horse. They slip past your awareness because they don't feel like danger. And because they don't feel like danger, you never treat them like a problem. You never negotiate them. You never question them. You never even count them properly. You just live inside them. And once spending becomes automatic, you're not the one making choices anymore. Your environment is making choices for you. Your habits are making choices for you. The corporations designing your menu and your apps are making choices for you. That's why small purchases don't just cost money, they cost control. One of the biggest small purchase killers of wealth is something that barely existed at this scale a couple decades ago: convenience. We turn convenience into a monthly tax. Delivery apps, same-day shipping, subscription services, premium tiers of everything, add-ons, small fees that don't feel like spending because they show up as separate line items. A $12 meal becomes $26 when you add delivery, service fees, and tips. But your brain doesn't register $26 because the cost is fragmented into little pieces that feel disconnected. That's not an accident. That's design. The system is engineered to lower the emotional pain of spending by splitting the damage into small hits that don't hurt. But convenience doesn't just cost money. It trains your brain to avoid friction, and friction is what protects wealth. Wealth is built by people who can tolerate a little friction today in exchange for freedom tomorrow. Convenience removes friction, and when friction disappears, overspending becomes effortless. You don't have to think. You don't have to plan. You just tap a button and spend more than you intended. Here's another pattern that quietly destroys wealth: the just this once purchase. You had a long day. You're stressed. You're tired. You don't want to cook. You don't want to think. So you spend money for comfort, and your brain tells you, this is just this once. But tomorrow happens. Then the next day happens. Then the next week happens. And suddenly, just this once becomes your lifestyle. This is how people destroy their financial future without ever noticing. Not because they're irresponsible, but because they're exhausted. These purchases aren't logical. They're emotional. They are micro rewards that help you cope with stress and boredom and burnout. That's why they're sticky. And that's why you can't solve them with math alone. You have to solve the psychology behind them, or you'll keep leaking wealth even when you know better. Small purchases feel free because your brain compares them to your income instead of comparing them to your future. If you make $4,000 a month, then a $12 purchase feels irrelevant. It feels like a rounding error. But the problem is, you don't make decisions once a month. You make them every day, and daily decisions compound. That's the hidden theme of modern personal finance. Compounding doesn't only apply to investing, it applies to spending too. The same mechanism that makes investing powerful over decades is the mechanism that makes small spending lethal over decades. It doesn't hurt today. It hurts later, and later is where people get trapped, because later is when time runs out. Now let's talk about the most brutal small purchase of all: subscriptions. Subscriptions are perfect wealth killers because they don't feel like spending. They feel like background noise. Small enough to ignore, permanent enough to become a lifestyle tax. Most people could not list every subscription they're paying for. They couldn't name them all, but they pay them like rent. The nasty part is subscription spending is invisible because after the first month, you stop thinking about it. The cost disappears from your awareness, but it never disappears from your account. Subscriptions don't steal money loudly. They steal it silently in a way that your brain stops noticing. This is why a subscription is more dangerous than a one-time purchase. A one-time purchase hurts once. A subscription is a decision that keeps charging you even when you're not paying attention. There's another category of small purchases that quietly destroys wealth: the extras, the delivery fee, the service fee, the premium upgrade, the add-on. The priority version, the little tip you throw in because you feel guilty. Each one looks small, but together they form a system where you're constantly paying more for speed, comfort, and convenience without realizing how much it adds up. This is why people feel like everything is getting more expensive, even when their rent or base expenses didn't change that much. It's not just inflation, it's monetization. Every moment of your day now comes with an optional payment attached to it. Pay for faster, pay for easier, pay for better, pay for now. And if you say yes often enough, those micropayments become a permanent part of your life. At this point, people usually argue about one thing: let people enjoy life, and that's fair. This isn't about turning your life into a miserable spreadsheet. You don't need to eliminate joy to build wealth. You need to eliminate leakage. There's a massive difference between spending on purpose and spending on autopilot. Wealth builders don't eliminate enjoyment. They eliminate unplanned spending that produces zero lasting value. They pick a few things they genuinely love, and they keep everything else boring and predictable. That's how wealth compounds. Not through perfection, but through consistency. Not through deprivation, but through control. Now let's actually solve the problem, because knowing about leaks is useless if you don't plug them. Here's the first rule. You do not beat small purchases with willpower. Willpower is a temporary fuel. It runs out. If your strategy requires you to be strong every day, you will fail. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. You beat small purchases with guardrails, systems, defaults. Your goal is not to become a monk. Your goal is to make overspending inconvenient and wealth building automatic. This is what wealthy people do best. They design their environment so the default outcome is progress. Here is a system you can implement immediately. It is simple and it works because it doesn't require constant motivation. Step 1. Track your small purchases for 1 week. Not forever, just 1 week. You need to see the truth, because right now your brain is lying to you about what's small. Write down every coffee, snack, delivery, convenience fee, and subscription charge you didn't consciously plan. At the end of 7 days, add it up. Most people are shocked. Step 2. Create a daily spending lane. This is the most important change. You choose a daily number for small purchases. Maybe it's $10, maybe it's $20, maybe it's $30, depending on your income and goals. But it's daily, not monthly, because daily is where decisions happen. Then you put that daily spending in a separate account or separate card. This makes the leak visible. When the lane is empty, you're done spending for the day. No guilt, no debate. The system makes the decision. Step 3. Automate wealth building first. This is the rule that changes everything. Your investing happens before spending, not after, not if there's extra, before. Every paycheck, money moves into productive assets automatically, and then you live off what remains. If you do this, you can spend without anxiety because your future is funded first. Step 4. Kill the subscription graveyard. Once per month, do a subscription audit. Cancel anything you don't use weekly. If you might use it someday, you won't. Cancel it. If you truly miss it, you can resubscribe later. But most people will realize they didn't even notice it was gone. Step 5. Replace convenience spending with planned convenience. This is the difference between autopilot and intention. If you love delivery, fine, but plan it. Choose 2 days a week where delivery is allowed. The problem isn't delivery. The problem is random delivery. Random spending is what kills wealth because it has no boundary. Step 6. Turn friction back on. This sounds weird, but it works. Delete saved cards in your apps. Turn off one-click checkout. Remove delivery apps from your home screen. Make overspending take effort. The entire modern economy is designed to reduce friction so you can spend without thinking. Your job is to reverse that. Friction is your friend. Here's a rule that allows you to enjoy life without getting destroyed by small purchases. It's called the 1 upgrade rule. pick one category of daily life where you spend more on purpose. Maybe it's coffee, maybe it's gyms, maybe it's restaurants. Choose one. Spend there guilt-free. But everything else stays baseline. This prevents the death spiral where you upgrade everything slowly until you're trapped. You don't need premium everything. You need one or two things you truly enjoy and a system that protects your future. The reason so many people feel stuck isn't because they're doomed. It's because they're leaking. They're leaking money through autopilot spending. They're leaking wealth through convenience fees. They're leaking freedom through subscriptions that quietly tax them forever. The small purchases are killing your wealth because they never demand your attention. They never trigger a warning. They never feel dramatic enough to stop. So here's the fix in one sentence. Automate investing first. Control small spending with a daily lane and kill the leaks that happen without permission. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to stop bleeding. If this video made you want to check your statement differently, share it with someone who always says, "I don't even spend that much." And subscribe, because we're building the blueprint one invisible money trap at a time. See you in the next video.